All right, listen up, y'all.
Greetings, everybody. This is your host and educator, Mr. Abdullah, with All Things Education Official. If you like what you're hearing, you like the content I'm giving out to you, giving you things about education, please feel free to like, subscribe, and share. Please feel free to leave a comment. Only helps to the broadcast get better. Helps me to understand what the people want to know. Helps me to delve into different topics dealing with education. And for that is what it is. It is All Things Education Official. What I'm going to talk about today is something that is something I've been actually dealing with for a very long time. Being in education, I've seen a deficit, and particularly in the Black community. My roots are in Michigan, particularly Detroit, Michigan, and I have a ton of friends and family that are in education, and I'm starting to see something that I have touched upon years ago, and my peers, fraternity brothers, people in other alternate organizations, which we're going to talk about shortly, refuse to truly address. And that is the deficit of education and our ability to actually do something about it, but refusing to for lack of drive, initiative. Maybe we are just comfortable, and we falling into this trap of let me just be amongst those that have so that I can feel like I do. What I want to talk about today about the racial incidences in the suburban area schools in Michigan, in particular the suburbs that surround Detroit, which is the largest city in Michigan. The list is just endless, but I want to start with some key cities. In Farmington, a parent refuses to send her children to Farmington schools because of racism. She actually sends her daughter to Cass Technical High School in Detroit, while she is a resident paying taxes in Farmington. Then you have Royal Oak, Michigan, another suburb of Detroit. Royal Oak Middle School is investigating reports of racist incidences. Next, you have multiple incidents of racism spark changes in Plymouth Canton community schools. And we also have Grosse Pointe. Grosse Pointe parent uses racial slurs during school board meetings. And finally, last but not least, which is what I want to discuss with the most probably, would be a new Bloomfield Hills High School has a cutting edge plan to eliminate racism. And you know what that is? Hiring a Black principal who incidentally worked in a previous district that was accused of racism. So we're going to talk about Black faces in high spaces in a second. We're going to talk about that as well. But I have been telling my fraternity brothers, and I'm a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. I was pledged and made in Michigan, so I know the landscape of Michigan. I know about Michigan schools. And out of my chapter alone, I have at least 5 educators, none of which have said to me, or maybe they just haven't talked about it openly, hey, we need to open our own school. We have a historic alumni chapter, Gamma Lambda chapter, which is fixated in Detroit. It's a historical chapter. I have not heard them say, hey, let's open a school. I'm going to call out some other organizations here, and I think it's very, very necessary. You have Delta Sigma Theta. Delta Sigma Theta actually opened an all-girl academy, which I just recently found out is closed. Had they have done the research, they would have known that all female schools in urban areas typically do not do well. It is not a model that works for young ladies as well as an all-male model. I'm doing the research on that now. I think that we need to address the biggest elephant in the room is that too many Black people have left Detroit and ran to the suburbs in search of a better life, but it's only aesthetically pleasing. It's only literally something that you're going to get that looks better, but it's not for you. If you grew up in Detroit, you knew the line. You knew what cities you were not supposed to be in. I live 2 blocks away from 8 Mile, which was the divider between Detroit and many, many suburbs running from east to west. We knew driving westward on 8 Mile, you were on the other side. You were in pretty much the suburbs, and you knew to lower your speed limit, make sure your license was good, make sure your lights were working, there was no broken tail lights, because those officers were quick to pull you over. I have had beer thrown on me in Warren. I've been called the N-word in Southfield. I've been chased out of a party in Canton. We didn't even think about going to Farmington or Bloomfield. That just wasn't even a consideration. Why? Because of the rampant racism. These places were de facto sundown towns. So what did you do? You decided to take your ass out there and live, and then put your children in their schools? Why? And the reason would be, no one wants to go to Detroit schools. Them schools raggedy. But they're yours. And I say yours meaning that the majority of the teachers there look like you. They lived in the community that you lived in. So you left and went to the suburbs. Why? To put your children in danger. And now all of those chickens are coming home to roost. We all know better, but we just chose not to do better for fear of not looking like we made it. I left Michigan a very, very long time ago. We're talking 2.5 decades ago, because of my financial situation. I had to go someplace that made a lot more money. I didn't, but even when I left, I went to a place, and I've always remained in the Black community. I've never lived in what they call a cosmopolitan area, a cosmopolitan community, a inclusive, a diverse community. I've always lived around Black people. That has always been my preference. I feel more comfortable around my own people. And I did not understand why some of my friends, fraternity brothers, moved to these areas, and they would always say, oh, the services, and they didn't understand why the schools were so bad. But my question would always be, well, what have you done to counteract that? What have you done to combat that? And all I got was crickets. I just didn't understand. Why didn't you stand up and go to the school board meetings? Why weren't you going to Lansing to have conversations with your representatives? Oh, because you thought it would be just so much easier to go to a predominantly white area and utilize their resources that they created for themselves. That just doesn't even make common sense. I am upset, and I'm charging the D9, they call them the Divine Nine, that is Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated, Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and Iota Phi Theta Fraternity Incorporated. Where are you? I'm asking the question because we have so many talented people in those organizations in the Detroit area. Why don't we have a school? I mean, we can go down the street with that. How come there's no banking system? How come there's no hospital? How come there's no supermarket? We can talk about that, but let's deal with education for today. Why are there no schools set up for our children? Hell, if for nothing, why wouldn't we set up schools for our personal children? Between Delta Sigma Theta and Alpha Kappa Alpha, you literally have thousands of members in the Detroit area. Let's not include any of the organizations. We're just going to deal with those two. Alpha Phi Alpha, thousands of members. And see, let me be clear. I'm an equal opportunity basher. You call me what you want, but I'm getting down on the alphas. I am disappointed that we don't have a school system set up. Delta Sigma Theta more so because that's what they're known for. Delta Sigma Theta is known for educating. They're known to be great educators. Why don't we have a successful school system that had been created decades ago? We know the need. We know that our children are subject to harm by going to these schools. And moving forward, this principal will be coming into Bloomfield Hills High School. And they say that that is part of their cutting edge plan to eliminate racism. Well, I'm going to challenge that, because just because you're Black does not mean you have Black interest at heart. We could look at our former biracial president, President Barack Obama, to see that. Clarence Thomas, he did not have the Black community truly in mind. We're not going to count Kamala Harris because she's an Indian. She's phenotypically Black. But she said herself when she was running for president that she wasn't going to do anything specifically for Black people. So putting a Black principal in front of your parents and students does not guarantee that the Black students will receive equal treatment in the classroom. We know these things exist. These are not going to change. It's time that we stop acting like if we just fight long enough and hard enough, these things will change. We are responsible for the transformation of our communities. We're responsible for the transformation of our children's educational levels. We need to create our own schools. It's time that we do it and stop forcing ourselves into other people's spaces. They were not created for us. They were not created by us. So do not think we're going to benefit from them. It is about time that we show a greater sense of purpose when it comes to the education of our children. And I'm going to leave with that. Once again, this is Mr. Abdullah with All Things Education Official. I know you may have some comments you may want to share. Please do, but definitely like, share with people who are of like mind. And once again, you are dismissed.
Yeah!